What's up with it, Raider Nation? It's your boy, Raider Honcho, and I'm back with a brand new video for you. Alright guys, get right into it. You already know the vibes. You already know what type of time I'm on. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, well damn. Subscribe to the channel. Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter, both at Raider Honcho, and check out redemptionbrand.com right now and get some of that fire merch. Now, after another pathetic, abysmal, embarrassing, just atrocious performance by the Las Vegas Raiders, the team we love, let that not go unsaid. We love the Raiders. We love being fans. We love everything about the Raiders, but we are sick and tired of seeing what we were seeing yesterday on the field, and that just is a team that just looks inept, that looks incompetent, that looks like they're just not prepared to play the game of football, the game that I happen to love, the game that I've been spending my whole life being a part of. And now you got Raiders players and coaches coming out and they're speaking in their own words. Now, we've had multiple content creators. You got myself, you got the graphics, you got the Wasted, you got the Mitches, you got all the people that I respect, the Samoans, the Sanjeets, you know, the people that I respect, okay? And everybody has their opinions of what the Raiders need to do, what's wrong with the Raiders, what's the problem, how to fix it, what's the solutions, who do we draft? We all know all of that. We all talked about that, but no matter what we say, we don't actually know what's going on within that locker room unless the people in the locker room start talking. And now after yesterday's game, it was clear to me that the Raiders have a problem. I said this in the beginning of the season, the Raiders have a problem stopping the run. I said the Raiders don't have a quarterback. I said the Raiders still need to prove that AP is a good head coach. It's just a lot of stuff that the Raiders still had to prove that I feel like as fans, a lot of people might have just disregarded and put to the wayside, because as a fan, you want to be convinced, you want to tell yourself, you want to believe that things can be different. Me, on the other hand, as a fan, I'm still, using my fully functional brain, and I can see that things just aren't right. But nevertheless, after yesterday's game, it was very apparent that something is wrong with the Raiders, something is off, and Max Crosby and Divine Diablo, to me, said the most profound things that kind of resonated with me in my mind, because it kind of echoed the sentiments that I had and what I was believing and what I was feeling and what I was seeing out there on the field. And when you talk about Max Crosby, look, I love Max Crosby. Max Crosby is a Raider, and I feel like it would be great for him to retire a Raider. But like I mentioned before, it's almost like we're bad with Max Crosby. We could definitely be bad without Max Crosby. You know what I'm saying? So if it comes down the road that Max Crosby is on the table for trade talks, it would not surprise me if you really need to blow this whole thing up and rebuild. That is not me saying we need to trade him. But anyway, back to the point is, what he was saying is that, it comes down to, they were asking him about the defense and stuff like that, and how come it looks good and then it doesn't finish well and all these other things. And he said it really comes down to like gap integrity. It comes down to getting off of blocks. It comes down to all of those things that we kind of call effort plays in the industry, right? If you're coaching or you're a player, you know that those are just effort plays. It doesn't take any talent for you to just kind of know your responsibility. It doesn't take much talent for you to know how to defeat blocks and know what your gaps are. Now, when Max Crosby is talking about gap integrity, basically what he's saying is that if you're responsible for the A gap, guys are not closing the A gaps. If you're responsible for the B gap, guys are not closing the B gaps. If I'm a linebacker and I know my defensive line is slanting to the right, which may be the strong side, I know that I'm going to have the backside gaps, and I have to close that window before I can run to open grass, right? So I think what Max Crosby is saying is that there is a lot of lack of gap integrity, meaning that when you have certain assignments that people are just not getting to the spots they need to get to and maintaining that gap integrity. In order to stop the run, you have to be gap sound. You have to be gapped out. And a lot of people don't really want to hear that because it's not the sexy talk, but that is the truth of the matter. If you are not gapped out, which is an A, B, C, and D gap, if you are not gapped out, you're going to get gashed. You're going to tap out if you ain't gapped out, because you're going to get ran all over. And I think Max Crosby is telling us that there is no gap integrity within that defensive line and the linebackers as a unit, right? He's also saying getting off of blocks. Well, that tells me that kind of goes with what AP was saying about business decisions, right? Because if you're not getting off of blocks and you're not defeating blocks, you don't want to. There's a certain way to get off a block. There's a certain way to beat a block. If you are going to be an offensive lineman or a defensive back or a linebacker, you are taught ways to how to get off of blocks. Either you're gonna dip and rip, you're gonna strong arm, you're gonna wrong arm, you're gonna freaking whatever you're gonna do right? You have to be able to defeat blocks in order to make plays. And what that tells me is the Raiders may not be showing all the effort they need to have in order to make those plays. Like, it looks like the other teams want it more than us. And that's just what it is. That's just what it sounds like to me is the problem. Like, you got to want it to get off a block. You got to want to do those things. That's not a talent thing. That's a want to thing, right? And when you talk about Divine Diablo, it sounds like he's saying the same thing, because they asked him what's the biggest problem stopping the run, and he was like, well, look, we already know stopping the run is one of our biggest problems. And they asked him, why is that? And he said, because it seems like guys are not playing their assignments. You got guys out there just doing their own thing. That's literally what he said. That's literally what he said, was guys are not playing their assignments, okay? That ties in what Max Crosby's saying. He's saying there's no gap integrity. That means guys aren't getting to their gaps. Well, if Diablo's saying that guys aren't playing their assignment and are doing their own thing, to me, that corroborates the story. That corroborates what I'm seeing on the field. I see a bunch of guys that, not that they look ill-prepared, they look like they have not been challenged to do their jobs properly. And the fact that they're not doing their jobs properly and they're still on the field is a problem for me. And so when you want to talk about the Raiders' issues, and like, I'm not a big proponent of just firing people, but when you want to question somebody's job and what they're bringing to the table, if you have players on the field that are not doing their job, it is on you to get them off the field, period. No matter what their name is, no matter what their contract is, if they're not doing their job, they should not be on the field. That goes to the coaching. If they're not doing their job because they don't know how to do their job, well, guess what? That falls on the coaching too, because somebody's not teaching them how to have gap integrity. Somebody's not teaching them how to get off of blocks. Now, I think it's the former rather than the later, because I don't believe that they're in practice all those days a week and somebody's not teaching them. You've been taught in Pop Warner, you've been taught in high school, you're a D1 football player, you've been taught how to get off blocks, you've been taught block destruction. So in the NFL, I can't sit here and think they're not teaching you those things or you don't know those things. I feel like you're not being held accountable for not doing those things. So to me, when I talk about the coaching, it's not necessarily X's and O's to me all the time. It's what type of effort are you giving your coach? What type of effort are you giving your teammates on the field? There's no doubt in my mind that the Raiders want to win games. There's no doubt in my mind that they think they're playing as hard as they can. But the truth of the matter is, when you sit back and think, it just looks like the Raiders are pretty stuck in some of their ways, and they're only going to give you the effort that they feel is good enough to get the job done. There is a reason why the Raiders seem to start well in every game but don't finish well. That comes down to coaching, in my opinion, because you're not being coached up for those moments. You're not being prepared for those moments, because I tell all my players this. When times get tough in games and you face adversity and shit hits the fan, you are not going to flip the switch and step up. That does not exist. You are going to fall down to your habits. Whatever habits you've created as a player and as a coach, you're going to fall down to them when things get rough in the game. You're going to go do what you trust. You're going to do what you normally do. You're not going to all of a sudden just flip the switch and be this godsend of a player if that's not what you are every day of the week. So to me, when I see the Raiders start a certain way, it doesn't mean anything to me, because I could stand on my head for 6 hours if I knew I had to. Right? Like, so at the end of the day, when you look at how the Raiders start the game versus how they finish the game, that is coaching to me, because it looks like they are not being coached to have better habits. Because when shit hits the fan, they're falling down to habits. And what their habits show me is that they're just super lackadaisical. They lose all fundamentals and principles. They don't know how to tackle anymore. There's no gap integrity. There's no assignments being followed through. The linebackers are not communicating with the linemen on where the protection might be sliding or where the gaps might be. Or we have a saying where we say, make the guy in front of you right. That means if I know Max Crosby's supposed to go left, but he ends up going right, me as the backer behind him, I go left. So that way we're still gapped out. You guys have got to understand the way the game is supposed to be played, and that there are certain assignments for certain people. And even though you might see players that look like they're doing what they're supposed to do, you really don't know what they're supposed to do. So when I hear the players talk about where we don't have gap integrity, we have players that's not doing their assignments, that is a huge red flag for me when it comes to the coaching. When it comes to the coaching, because yes, it is up to a player to do what he's supposed to do, but it's up to the coach to identify when the player's not doing what he's supposed to do and hold that player accountable. And I don't see any accountability right now being held on the players or being held on the coaches, and that's why it's a problem for me. Now, what I want you guys to do is get down in the comments, let me know what you think. Who do you blame for what's going on right now? If you have players telling you that they're not following their assignments, you got players doing their own thing, and you got Max Crosby, one of the best players on the team, if not the best player on the team, telling you that we have no gap integrity and we're not getting off of blocks, who do you really blame for those things? Get down in the comments, let me know right now, man. I also want you to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You already know all of that stuff I'm going to tell you, all right? Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter, both at Raider Honcho. And until the next time, as always, Raider Honcho out.